Biden's DOJ is pushing hard today to lock up Steve Bannon, one of the biggest and most influential voices in the MAGA movement. Same as former Trump White House advisor Peter Navarro, Bannon was likewise convicted of a contempt charge for not complying with the illicit January 6th Congressional Committee. And like Navarro, he's been fined to stay out of prison after being sentenced back in October of 2022 to 4 months behind bars. Navarro is still fighting for his appeal, and now the Miami prison system is claiming that Navarro is just too notorious to allow anyone, even Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, to interview him while he's behind bars, something which the congressman is now having investigated because even literal mob bosses have conducted interviews from behind bars. So this is entirely political. Are they trying to do the same thing to Bannon right before November, lock him up and shut him up? Biden's prosecutors are saying that since an appeals court upheld his conviction last week, that he is out of excuses and must be put away. What precedent does that send for President Trump, who's facing his own contempt fight because of the unconstitutional gag order placed on him? See how all of this works. Navarro's behind bars, Bannon could be right there behind him, and then even maybe Trump. All while Eric Holder got barely a slap on the wrist for his contempt of Congress, and all that talk of holding Hunter Biden in contempt for refusing to testify before Congress has long fizzled out. The House Oversight Committee is now announcing their own contempt of Congress vote for Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland, who is still refusing to hand over the audio tapes of Special Counsel Robert Hur's interview with Joe Biden over the classified documents case. A markup for the resolution to hold Garland in contempt of court is scheduled for this Thursday. But unless we see Garland or Hunter or any other top Democrat rotting behind bars like Navarro is, not allowed to speak to anyone, then I really don't want to hear about it. Republicans cry about double standards and then do absolutely nothing to fix it. Even worse, they keep funding these very entities which are weaponized against us. So how do we defeat the left? Well, our first guest tonight has a new book explaining just that. It's titled Domestic Enemies, The Founding Fathers' Fight Against the Left. Joining us now to discuss is the author of this book, Daniel Greenfield, a Shillman Journalism Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Daniel, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Great. So given the lawfare that we see on display, do you think your new book comes at a very prescient time?
I think it's an important message, and part of the message is exactly what you were discussing right now, which is that the Founding Fathers were not afraid to hit hard. They were not afraid to go after the left. George Washington becomes the only president, as far as I know, to lead troops in the field when the left tries one of its little revolutions. We imposed something called the Alien and Sedition Act to criminalize foreign radicals backed by globalist governments coming to America to pursue radical fundamental transformation. Those are all things that would horrify and shock most Republicans, and yet the Founding Fathers found them to be useful tools when facing enemies from the left.
When it comes to the left, obviously everyone has a different definition of exactly what they mean by the left. So for the purposes of your book, how do you define what the left is?
Well, the left rebrands. It constantly has new names. For a while, it was calling itself woke. Now we'll never use the term woke again because it became negative. But the left believes in a few very simple things. It believes that it has a destiny to seize control over all the machinery of government and over all society to impose equality. And this goes back, I discuss in my book, really the French Revolution, which in complete opposition to the American Revolution was based on enforcing total equality. And total equality also means total tyranny. So whatever the left calls itself at any given time, it wants this condition. It wants total power and total tyranny.